Welcome back to pixelprojectradio. This is part 3 of our Xenosaga episode 1 miniseries, the penultimate episode. We're going to be wrapping it up between this episode and next week's episode. I'm joined again by Chris from the Retro Hangover podcast and Nick from Friday Night Gamecast. Thanks for joining me again, fellas.
Thanks for having us back. Really appreciate it, Rick.
Yeah, happy to be here, man. Thanks for letting us come back for part 3.
Yeah, this is where the game starts to really pick up on some of these threads that they've been setting up. I'm looking forward to it. We're not going to get to my favorite scene in the game in this episode, I don't think, but, you know, next time, things are really going to crank up. But for today, last time we stopped after we saw Cherenkov meeting KOS-MOS while she was asleep. He had the gun and he was going to shoot her, but he chickens out. This is after we get picked up by the Elsa. And one thing that I wanted to say up front today, just for the sake of pacing and keeping the flow going, keeping the conversation going, there might be some little one-off scenes, those 30-second cutaway scenes that I might just breeze through today and not even mention if there's something that can be covered or explained in a later scene, you know, things like small character building or, you know, setups and things of that nature. But we'll still talk about it. For now, let's pick up where we left off. So like we said, Cherenkov did not shoot KOS-MOS. He can't go through with that. Xion ends up finding him. She brings him some curry, and she just believes everything he says here. He's like, oh, you know, I just have this gun because it's a habit, you know, being in the military, you know?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, Chris, you know, you carry a gun with you everywhere you go.
Yeah, everywhere, even like in the pool, when I shower, when I'm at that special time of the night. You know what I'm saying? It's always got to be strapped on there.
He keeps that thing on him.
Nice. Yeah, we know he keeps that thing on him. I had a note here, something that I was wondering. So we saw in a flashback previously that Cherenkov was part of the UTIC crew that commandeered the Woglinde whenever they were building the KOS-MOS archetype.
Mm-hmm.
I had wondered, I'd written it down here. Obviously, Cherenkov probably recognizes Xion, but Xion probably doesn't recognize Cherenkov, does she?
Okay, so that's a question of mine about this whole aspect of like the two different... Oh, well, Xion. I guess Xion was there. I was thinking like KOS-MOS doesn't recognize him because this iteration of KOS-MOS is a completely new machine. It's not even close to the one that massacred everybody in the flashback, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of thinking the same. Maybe I'm thinking the same thing you are, Nick. But yeah, I don't think that Xion would recognize Cherenkov because Cherenkov just kind of runs away. He's kind of hiding his face the entire time.
Yeah, he had his helmet on, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But even to that point, KOS-MOS might be a completely different KOS-MOS, but we don't know how much the programming is changing, what the source code is, how KOS-MOS came to be, what kind of AI she is, what caused to trigger her to do what she did before. Like, none of that's really revealed to us.
Right, not yet. And I have this later in the notes, but just in case, just as a little refresher, I was consulting the data log much more, or the database much more this time around. So just as a refresher on UTIC. So the official name of UTIC is the Unknown Territory Intervention and Creation Agency. And here's what the data log says about that. An agency connected closely with the Miltian conflict, references of which are made throughout episode 1. It was buried in obscurity for decades, but reappeared in TC 4767, which is when this story begins. An independent organization not associated with the Galaxy Federation, it nevertheless boasts a level of technology and military force that far surpasses those of the Federation government or military. And it was founded by Joachim Mizrahi.
So it's like a super high-tech mercenary group almost.
It's like BlackRock with a lot more money.
Yeah. They actually own the government.
So speaking of the government, we get a brief cutscene here with Yuli Mizrahi and our Jedi Council. The gist of this is that Momo contains something called the Y data, and that is very important. That is essentially all of Joachim Mizrahi's research, and this is integral to the Zohar project somehow. So Momo is very much a wanted individual. But other than Momo, they only have one lead. There is this blurry security cam footage of another young man who was Joachim Mizrahi's assistant in the past. But the problem is that No records of him exist. If he is alive, he would be around 28 years old. And they speculate that he may be in Vector. So at this time, I don't know. At this time, it's probably not Alan. I think, right? Maybe.
No, I would heavily doubt that.
Certainly not.
Hilarious reveal, though, if that's true.
That would be crazy.
If it weren't for Vector, I would have gone straight to Chaos. But they do specifically call out that he's believed to possibly be in Vector. So
Interesting.
Who knows?
Could it be the antagonist in a sense? I mean, they are kind of projecting, and if this is kind of a Realian type of a person or not a full human and has more dimensions of mortality, it could be our antagonist, our lead antagonist for this game.
It could be. Another person that I thought of was Jin, was Xion's brother. Even though he's not really that much of a character in this game, he's brought up a few times. We don't know his age, but it could be him as well. We're also just assuming that they're right and that this person's in Vector. They might not be.
True.
But speaking of Vector, Xion receives new orders and she is pissed. She's about to go off. She demands to see the manager, and she gets on a video call with the director, who he looks like weirdly like John Hodgman. It was kind of disarming. But at any rate, the new orders state that KOS-MOS is to be handed over to Second Miltia after being outfitted with her secondary weapons. The reason why, he says, it's because he heard about the casualties, you know? He does mention that no human sacrifices were suffered, so I don't know, like, maybe he doesn't know about Virgil?
That's what I was going to say. I was like, that whole area got completely wiped out by the Gnosis. So it's it's very, and it's known that the Gnosis, whenever they do attach to humans or attack humans, the humans evaporate. So it's unclear of how many people were like killed or MIA versus like, were they able to, recover black box security footage from the Woglinde? Who's to say?
Yeah, funny enough, that's all going to come into play later.
Yeah.
But what does he mean, like, no human sacrifices? Was everyone who died on that ship, were they a Realian? Because
the captain died, and surely he was a human, right?
Yeah, there seemed to be tons of humans on that ship. Like, a lot of them. Not to mention, like, we saw at the very beginning of the game, humans touching the emulated Zohar and disappearing. Which was mentioned that there were human casualties because of that. So, like, what is he on?
Exactly. It's at this point it's unclear, but it seems that information is being withheld from somebody. We just don't know who yet.
Unless he's specifically talking about the Vector employees.
That could be it, because I mean, that seems to be all anybody cared about. Nobody cared about any of the military assets that were on the Woglinde that weren't involved with Vector, and KOS-MOS clearly has a directive built into her from who knows where to protect them, because it's like everything that KOS-MOS does up to this point, Xion is perplexed and surprised about, even though she was the one that was principally involved of getting KOS-MOS up and running and programming her and doing all the testing on her before she was awakened. So it's like, where did KOS-MOS get all of these directives, this unknown data from, before she autonomously awoke herself? So there's a lot of interesting questions posed here at this point.
Yes.
Some of which we do get some light shed on today, like in this PPR episode, but some of them we'll have to wait till next time, or even, Xenosaga 2. But we'll see. At any rate, Xion yells, "Director!" at him a few more times, and he says, "Okay, you can keep KOS-MOS, just be careful." And that's pretty much the end of that. All the while this is going on, this part was so freaking cool. I'm curious to hear what you guys thought of it. Ziggy and Momo are still being pursued by Utic, by Margulis's folk dogs, to use Albedo's words, in hyperspace. And they're Momo's navigating the ship, trying to get out of there, and there's this huge space battle that takes place. It's so cool. It's so sick.
Yeah, really cool scene here. Especially the scenes that are going to follow. Just them trying to evade pretty much their pursuers, and then how the crew of the Elsa, they react. And I think it really goes to show just how well the crew of the Elsa comes together, because at this point we have nothing but to assume they're kind of a ragtag group of space jockeys.
Yeah, bumbling goofballs.
But you see there, and I think this is the scene where you start to get an indication they're about as capable as they say they are, which is very capable. And that's good to know, since you're on this crew, that you're actually part of like a decent force that can get you around reliably. especially being able to save Ziggy and Momo here. And a lot of the scenes, and it's kind of like the determination that you see from your characters in order to save them. I think it was specifically Xion. Is that correct? Who wants to save them? Or because I think Cosmos might be misremembering a little bit, but Cosmos is kind of like screw him.
I'm not sure. I remember KOS-MOS having that attitude with Xion and Alan, but
yeah,
I don't remember about this part.
She may still be asleep, but I know that like there's a big, not a big conversation, but a bit of a conversation about how much they need to rely on saving them.
I will say I do love this scene though with Momo and Ziggy as they're in the ship, avoiding the pursuers from Margolis. It's just, it gives me I don't know if you guys made this connection or not, but it gave me a lot of Empire Strikes Back vibes when Han and Leia and the rest of the crew are in the Millennium Falcon weaving in and out of the asteroids while they're being pursued by the TIE fighters in there. Just, it has a lot of that energy. And again, like I said this last episode, I think I've said this each of the previous episodes, but I am still so surprised that this game looks as good as it does for the time period that it came out and how much it like holds up. It's just the art style is there and they nailed what they wanted to do with it. And again, it's just, going back to the graphics engine being, halfway incomplete throughout most of the primary production for this game. It's really significant.
Yeah, that's crazy. This does feel very Star Wars, right, Chris?
Absolutely.
You like Star Wars?
No, but it does feel like it.
You mentioned saving them. The Elsa does save them. Ziggy and Momo, for a minute, they think they're done for, and the Elsa is able to open up their boarding section of their ship and get them in. We have to go through some battles here to actually get into the Elsa, but we do make it in okay. Ziggy has a great deadpan delivery here as he and Momo are entering. He asks her if she's okay. And she's like, I'm built tougher than I look. Are you okay? And he says, I am built as tough as I look. I like that a lot. Their relationship is really cool. It's at the time that I wrote this note, it was fresh off of Final Fantasy 13, but they have a relationship that sort of reminds me of Fang and Vanille, where our words of categorization don't quite do it full justice. This is an area in which words fail. They can't possibly contain all of the multitudes and subtleties of real life experience. And like their relationship, it's sort of father-daughter, sort of little sister, sort of friend, sort of work relationship. It's very subtle. I really like it. They often in these upcoming scenes will look at each other and kind of confirm with a nod whether or not they want to disclose new information to these strangers. I think that's really cool.
Especially considering how short they've been together in terms of their relationship. Because up until this point, well, I say a lot of things up until this point, but really when it comes to Ziggy in terms of his character being developed in and of itself, he's kind of presented as this very militaristic, very tough, very no-nonsense character. But it seems like when he's talking with Momo, you are getting that relationship that you just described. So you're not getting this really super tough, super badass kind of character. It's just, as we kind of mentioned in the previous episode about how he is, he's kind of like the voice of reason, very level-headed, but he's like very amicable with Momo. They hit it off really quick. Like they seem to have a special bond that you don't really see with a lot of other characters. It just seems so natural. Like it's not forced or overdeveloped, but it's also like it hits everything perfectly in terms of hints and a like fully fleshed relationship. It seems like they've been friends forever.
Yeah, I agree. I get the feeling that Ziggy, after, playing through this game for as many hours as I have, like I get the distinct feeling that Ziggy's voice actor is probably my favorite and arguably one of the most talented of the bunch. Obviously, he has a lot of like credits, of course, being most famous for his work in Ghost in the Shell, but like it's just, yeah, it is very well done. And I agree with you that camaraderie between him and KOS-MOS, and obviously that glimmer when we talked about, obviously Ziggy's traumas and his issues with what you would imagine is like, the loss of his family or the idea that he wanted to, kill himself is, those feelings are reawoken by his contact with Momo and her being essentially herself and programmed as a human, even though she is a Realian. It's very easy to kind of just like fall into that relationship, which seems to be true for a lot of other character dynamics here.
We get some downtime here where everybody's introducing themselves. We're having coffee and tea. Tony, his ego is real hurt that little Momo is a better pilot than he is. He's like, he doesn't care that she's a Realian. He's just like, little girl is fucking bullshit. He doesn't say that, but
Yeah.
It turns out we're all going to Second Milsha. What a coinky dink.
The party is there. Everyone's having a party at Second Milsha.
And speaking of party, we are about to meet our last main party character, Junior, a.k.a. Little Masta.
Lil Masta himself.
Little Masta.
Lil Masta on the track. Gotta love it.
So
my favorite
Junior,
character.
He's your favorite character?
Yeah, in this game by far.
Oh, cool. Okay. He is a very interesting character. He looks like a little kid, like a little older than Momo. He wears this black trench coat that's got is it the Zohar or is it the Kukai Foundation logo on the back? I can't remember.
I think it's Kukai. I think it's the Kukai Foundation. I have to go back and look, but it would make more sense if it was the Kukai Foundation.
Yeah. He wears green pants and he's got this bright red hair. He's a bit of a firecracker. We learned that he's not really a kid. I don't think we'll get to it in today's episode, but he's not quite. But he's a gunslinger. That's kind of his ability in this game. He fights with guns. I found him to be an extremely useful party member. I usually keep him around if I can.
Yeah, just because everything he does is at a distance. So that's always very, very helpful because he can attack far all the time, which means his attacks are never really negated in terms of a near or far attack. The only thing that's really a problem with him so far as a character is there's the difference between like the physical attacks and ether attacks. And I think for him, they're like all physical, but this doesn't it doesn't really seem to make sense with the way the rest of the other characters attack either. But he has some of the best super moves that you have in the game that you can chain together. And he does become, as you said, probably your most reliable and most valuable character. With by the end of the game, for me, it was Shihan and KOS-MOS for various reasons about who could buff and debuff and damage and all this stuff like that. But yeah, probably the cornerstone of your party, I would say.
Yeah, agreed with all of what you're saying here. And it's also cool is the fact that he shows up in an egg. When he's out there, it's like very cool. It's just the stylized nature of it, and it looks like chrome embossed, and he's got his like earrings on. He's just he seems like a cool character when he shows up, and you can tell that he's going to make a big impact on the story going forward there. Yeah, I agree with you both. He was a super reliable character. I kind of swapped him in and out. I just liked having Momo in the party as like that security of having a healer, even though you technically don't need two healers. Although I liked, as you were saying earlier, Chris, having Shion being able to pilot her egg. But there's like, again, strategic upsides and downsides for that, especially if like you get close to being killed. And that, so it's definitely a little bit of a balancing act, but I liked Junior a lot here.
And yeah, he is out there in a mech. He comes out in an eggs unit. He's just kind of scouting around. He's exploring. And he's talking with his shipmates, they're back on the ship, Mary and Shelley, about how stupid books are, which is pretty cool.
You're quite the poet today, little master. Where do you come up with this stuff, huh?
Read some books, Mary. It's good for you.
Books are made from paper, little master. And they're such a pain to carry around.
Paper and stone tablets last longer than optical data, you know. Besides, reading a book helps me get to sleep.
we don't read on this podcast, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Mary and Shelley, that's some interesting names. Is that a reference to something?
yeah
surely not.
They talk a little bit about being shocked that the planet Ariadne has completely disappeared, and they wonder about this distress signal that they saw a while ago. It could have been the Elsa, it could have been back when the Woglinde got attacked. It's not really clear. But they figure it was the Gnosis, so they set a course out to look for him. We get another scene here, and, like I said, I'm going to try to not do every single cutaway scene that we have, but this one is actually important. Cherenkov is reporting to Margulis here. He tells him that they've got Momo, but more importantly, throughout this, we see more of Albedo. We actually don't know Albedo's name yet, but it's not really a spoiler, but it's just easier to refer to him as that than the white-haired dude. He and Margulis, Albedo and Margulis, seem to be in an alliance with each other solely because they find each other to be useful. And it's revealed here that Albedo wants Momo too. He to the other Realians around him, the 100 series, he says he's tired of playing with these Kirschwassers.
You just love barking out those orders, don't you, Margulis? Show a little love to your dogs, or else they might bite you one day.
You.
The prototype belongs to me. I've grown bored with these Kirschwassers.
Do either of you speak German? You know what that means?
No. I should, but I don't.
What's a Kirschwasser?
It's like a type of brandy, I think. It's like a cherry alcoholic brandy beverage.
Huh.
Interesting thing to call people.
I wonder if it's like some type of like derogatory, like women drink this drink or something.
Well, that I'm not sure. What I thought was interesting calling them Kirschwassers is coming off of the back of what we know about DME addiction, right? It's that people consume these things, and he's offhandedly referring to them as Kirschwassers, just things that you consume. And he refers to Momo as his pêche, ma pêche, which is French for peach. And interestingly, it is also there's another play on words here. Momo is the Japanese word for peach as well. So there's just this circular wordplay going on here.
That's cool.
It's really neat. But yeah, how insidious to refer to them as Kirschwassers, given that we just learned about DME addiction. You kind of, sticking your finger in the wound, so to speak.
It's definitely implied at this point that he is like, that Albedo is a DME addict for sure, right?
There's so much going on with Albedo.
Yeah.
Like that's definitely part of it
his
for
issues.
sure. Yeah.
We'll meet more of him in next week's episode. Today we just get some glimpses here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So Junior and his crew, they find the wreckage of the Woglinde, and they decide to go in and do some exploring. We find some Utic folks in here. No idea why they're here, but they're snooping around. So we're able to escape Junior is back to his ship before Utic completely blows up the wreckage of the Woglinde up. And this is where a battle between the Durandal, which is Junior's ship, and the Utic ships come into play. They fire on him, and then Junior fires back. The Junior's ship is shaped like a sword, which is
so
like
cool.
Durandal as a sword is like a sword in some kind of myth. I can't remember if it's French or something, but
I just looked it up. I apologize, but it's the sword of Roland, a legendary paladin and partially historical officer of Charlemagne in French epic literature.
Oh, okay. You got it.
There
You got
you
it
go.
right, Rick. It was French.
Yes.
Well, we were both close enough.
Can I make a quick note here before we get into the mechanics of the battle? But like going back to like being introduced to Albedo, because I feel like we're kind of introduced to him in the previous scene when he's talking with Margulis and they had this uneasy alliance amongst each other. I will say, of all of the character design of each of these individuals that we've met so far, talking about Chaos, talking about Junior, and as successive as we learn more about the characters in this universe, I will say this right now: Albedo is one of the most visually interesting characters of the entire cast. And we talked about before in terms of the character design, and of course it being just a product of the 90s and a product of the PS2 and its capabilities and how people have those dead eyes. I feel like the way that they drew Albedo, or the way that they animated him, he is the most lifelike character of the bunch, in my personal opinion. I don't know. Do you guys agree on that?
Now that I'm reflecting, I would 100% agree. He seems to have the most effort put into his character design.
Yeah.
He seems to be the most fully realized, whereas everyone else kind of looks like dolls.
Mm-hmm.
He is the one that seems to have the most human amount of functionality compared to everybody else, where everyone else is kind of sitting in that uncanny valley. He is the closest one to being outside of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm going to put a pin in something that I wanted to say here, because it'll be more appropriate later once we meet a new character too.
Definitely.
But yes, Albedo, we're going to learn so much more about him next time. Although we don't learn everything. This is another thing, raise those shot glasses. This is another thing that gets answered in part 2 and part 3.
Getting drunk.
Taking a swig.
Memorial Day weekend, baby. This does lead to a little dungeon here. The dungeon is the Utic ship. We're walking around. There's some puzzles here to get through it, opening various gates and doors and such. This ultimately leads in a failed attempt to steal the Utic ship's mainframe data. I didn't take notes on this dungeon. It's fine. And I'm going to say that about most all of them, actually. But
this is where you start to learn that your dungeons are going to be spent mostly in silence.
Yeah.
Yes, not this one, but I think the next major one we get to is incredibly long too, and also silent.
Yes. Like this one's actually relatively short, and it could be forgiven because I think this is the first one that is in complete silence, if I remember correctly. And it's just the whirring of everything in the background. And all like the only song in the entire time is the battle theme. And it's just like, it could have been like put in some like, I don't know, Metal Gear Solid music or something, and it could have made this a little bit better. Maybe not directly Metal Gear Solid, but something interesting. It's just the silence just.
So for now, Junior wasn't able to successfully steal that. He fails. So we're back right now with the Elsa and the crew. We're stopping at the Dock Colony, which is this colony of, ships that is on the way to Second Miltia. We're stopping there to repair the Elsa because it's all buggered up. This area has an interesting past because it was raided before by the Federation government. And ever since, the locals really, really distrust the government and army and marines and things like that. In the past, this was like a Realian facility. And at one point, a Realian lost control and massacred, it just went on a rampage. And that's why the federal government had to step in, Federation government. Turns out that becomes a plot point in episode 2. But we're not going to talk about it today. But the long and short of it is they really, really, really do not like the government. Based, as the kids say. This is doubly cool because Cherenkov in full uniform is just wandering around. So he's asking for trouble.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We go to look for him, and we see him getting beat up by some local thugs in this cutscene. And the camera zooms in on his face here. Like, as the scene fades to black, we zoom in on his face. He's getting angry, like Hulk style. And the Aleph symbol from the Hebrew alphabet appears on his forehead glowing. And the scene kind of fades out. We don't know what happens. We end up finding Hammer, who was like cowering behind this crate. He saw it all. And he says, in the thug, the alleyway has beat up all commander, because he's a scaredy cat. But when we check it out, all that's there are the thugs, and they're beaten within like an inch of their life.
I thought he killed them.
Yeah, I thought he just straight up murdered them.
He may have. I vaguely remember Ziggy saying they're alive, but barely.
You're not doing anything to help them.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we just kind of leave.
Yeah. Like, hey, well, nice being here. Time to go.
That's right. Yeah, because he wants to get them to the hospital. He tells Xion, but that they're barely hanging on.
If we're being generous, we can assume that some of their local folks probably took him in. This might be something you could learn by just talking to various NPCs, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, this is an interesting area, and it is important later if you want to get some special items and of the like. It's bigger than it kind of presents itself as, which is, I might be thinking of a different area, but like there's some cool things you can do. There's a shop that you could go to. There's some emails you can get. This is the area that I officially learned to hate emails and how this game distributes them and rewards you for investing into companies and stuff like that, because you have to step in certain areas after going in and out of buildings so many times and talking to certain characters. But aside from that, yeah, I mean, it's a nice little interesting area that will have not a lot of significance, but for items and like completionist stuff, this is why this exists.
This isn't where we find the Mad Doctor with the Erda Kaiser, is it? That's in...
that's what I was saying when I first was talking, but that's the city where the Durandal links up to.
Yes,
Kukai Foundation.
yeah. That's Kukai. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I keep on getting them mixed up in my head, even though I was playing it.
Cherenkov, it turns out, he's already back at the dock, and he's giving a cagey explanation about all of this that happened. He's like, they jumped me. I had some help. They beat up each other, actually. I think that's what he says. Mm-hmm. And he's really against Momo using nanotechnology on him for like surgery to fix him up. Really, really against it.
And he doesn't give a reason as to why in this scene.
No, he doesn't give a reason, even if you talk to him like after this scene is over. He, he just says, I just don't like it. I'm not comfortable here. There is another nice little scene here too between Ziggy and Momo, where Ziggy asks Momo to fix him up, and Momo says, "Well, Shion would probably do a better job," and he's like, "I feel embarrassed about my body," is basically what he says. He doesn't like being worked on by young women because he's embarrassed of his body, which is interesting given that he wants to be cyborg. I don't know. It's not interesting. I think it's understanding. Humans have depth, turns out.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
But, Momo gets momentarily offended by it because she's like, "Oh, you don't see me as a person. You see me as a machine." And he's like, no, I'm comfortable with you because you are so pure of heart. It's like, maybe you're telling the truth. It sounds like a lie, but maybe you're telling the truth.
Sounds like he got caught up in being like, how do I get out of this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Cherenkov immediately follows up and is like, "Oh, how I envy you." And then just like walks out of the room, and they're like, "What's wrong with him?" It's a really interesting moment.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We're going to learn a lot about him. And actually, we learn more about him right now because we have a short little break, and then we take off back towards Second Miltia. We see Cherenkov struggling in the kitchen. I think it's the kitchen, but he's dropping stuff because his hand is beginning to become transparent. And he has a flashback to when he got grabbed by the Gnosis. So some kind of transformation is happening here. And presumably it's because a Gnosis came into contact with him.
Yeah, it was the scene on the bridge, right? When the Gnosis like surprises everyone, and that's the introduction to chaos. And you see that this strange individual has the ability to just dematerialize Gnosis without any type of Hilbert effect. It's very interesting. So yeah, clearly ongoing effects are implied here, and you see his condition deteriorating rapidly.
But these things are not happening to Shion. And Shion also got grabbed by a Gnosis.
Which is curious, right?
Yes.
Right. Speaking of Shion, she has another dream here. She's face to face with that girl in white. And this is what she says.
Shion, it may already be too late. Who are you? What do you mean, too late? What's too late? Ultimately, the choice is up to him. But you may be able to understand him in his final moments. Indeed, that will bring him comfort.
I can't remember, but I thought that this was in the game. There was like a shot that implied this pretty heavily to be Cherenkov, but she is talking about Cherenkov here.
Yeah, I think it's heavily implied anyway with just the way that it's shot and the fact that you do see something is wrong with him. Like, if you are deteriorating and you're essentially what it looks like, I was thinking he was becoming a Gnosis or something was going to happen to him because of his condition. So I think, regardless, it's heavily implied whether or not they implicitly say it's Cherenkov or not.
We do learn, though. We learn in a few minutes here.
We certainly do.
Answers do occur in this game, surprisingly enough.
For once. We don't really have much time to dwell on this now, though, because we are forced out of hyperspace by an actual army of Gnosis. Like a real, honest-to-goodness army. Colonies stretching as far as the eye is able to see. And it's kind of crazy. Like, we've never seen this many in one location before. And there are some that are as big as or bigger than our ships even. And into the biggest one, we actually get forcibly pulled inside. Like, whether it's gravity or whether it's through the Gnosis' own will, it's not really clarified, but we get pulled inside of this one Gnosis, the largest one on record, which is named Cathedral Ship.
It's so cool. I love the fact that, like, that they really are sticking to the aesthetic here, and obviously it's like the whole scene where they jump out of hyperspace, and again, like, KOS-MOS scans the environment, and there's this ship that, for context, part of the ship dwarfs like a hemisphere of the planet. Like, it's you see it's larger than that. So it's like, in terms of scale here, it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, agreed. It's really, really good. This is, by the way, this will turn out to be the dungeon that is ridiculously long. It's so long.
Yeah.
When we're pulled in, though, it's just our party. Like, the ship of the Elsa and the Elsa crew are nowhere to be seen. But inside, this is kind of like it kind of looks like the inside of something like Monstro from Kingdom Hearts, but also it's kind of also a city-ish. It's difficult to describe, you know?
It's definitely looks like it they're taking fragments of all these other things. Like it's been I hate to say, because this is there's better examples, but for recency bias, it's kind of like when you're playing South Park: The Stick of Truth and you're going up Mr. Slave's ass, and
It's just like that, yeah.
yeah, like you're seeing all these remnants of society and all these like familiar images, because there's parts that look like a city over here and then a building over here, and like but none of it really comes together. It's just like fragments of everything, like just different parts of a cityscape. Like you're inside of a city that's just been so disfigured through whatever transformation it's been going into inside this gnosis that you have to navigate your way through.
And that's a good thing to bring up too, is that the buildings that we see in here, the billboards, there's a billboard with like just 3 fish on it that just says "Y" in all caps. It's awesome. But these pieces of society are from the planet Ariadne. So somehow we can infer that things that are coming into contact with the Zohar emulator are being transported into the Gnosis. Why or how? We don't know.
Or how well are they preserved? Like, how are you looking at it? If you're in there as survivors, is there the potential to be any other survivors? When we don't see any in here, but why couldn't there be? Are you in a different state of dimension than what these figures are, and that's why they're so transfigured, and that's why they're so morphed out? Are you just kind of on a different plane of existence than what is inside of here based on the way that you were absorbed? These are the things that, like, once I learned that I started wondering, because if this is the planet that was blown up and there are still remnants of society here, why are all the non-living things existing? Where are the living things? And if you're able to live, why wouldn't anything else be able to?
Right. It's an interesting concept. It's just we're not sure at this point what the connection is.
Right.
Now's not the time to dive into that though, because we're about to learn all about Cherenkov's background, and it is crazy. This is through a series of flashbacks. It's unclear where this all began, but what we see first is Cherenkov on trial, and his lawyer, I guess it's his lawyer, sure, is petitioning for a lighter sentence of level 7 personality conditioning. She mentions offhand that, like, yes, he has to pay for his crimes, but it's ridiculous to use capital punishment for something that's been dormant for, decades and decades and hundreds of years. Like they haven't had to use that law or that system of punishment for so long, and it's like, yes, he should answer for his crimes, but putting him to death might be a bit much. And it turns out that this lawyer ends up being his wife. And we see in the next scene, the two of them talking. He finds this application for a cloning procedure, and she is just incredibly cruel to him, beyond measure almost. She's like, the only reason I married you and volunteered to take care of you is so I could get access to this cloning procedure. This isn't about love. You're a fool. I get all the love I can get right here. And she throws her headset.
This is really an interesting moment, and I think this kind of changed because I was assuming, because to me at this point, I was kind of annoyed by Cherenkov's character. He was this antagonist. He's clearly a double agent. He's working for Margulis. He's not being upfront with the party, and it's just characters like this typically in sci-fi fantasy, games or shows or movies, whatever media it is. He before this moment was like Mr. Smith from Lost in Space. If I'm getting that character's name right. But yeah, he feel like Dr. Smith maybe is what it is. But anyway, he definitely, once you realize his backstory, once you realize the gravity of what he was subjected to, on the Ariadne, or his personal history and what he went through by being punished by this, this court, and kind of being caged in at this moment. It's tragic. It's definitely tragic.
Yeah. It's just the thinking, kind of the explanation of what's going on with him is I kind of see him as I think the name is of the character is like Alex from Clockwork Orange. Like we will recondition you, we will change you, and you will adhere to society in the way that we want you to, because they're talking about rearranging his personality so he is someone that can function in society as they want him to be. as opposed to him actually being a human being. Like, you will behave in the manner that is appropriate. You will not behave in the manner that you should. And just like you see in A Clockwork Orange, and I don't know if there's any parallels here, inspiration, but when he gets out of personality conditioning, like even in A Clockwork Orange, everyone is just kind of treating him like absolute shit. And he can't react because he cannot be a human being and react and stand up for himself and express himself, because he has been taught to only behave in ways that society wants you to behave. So that, I think that's part of it. And this is why his wife is just being utterly trash to him. And she probably knows that she can be, and she's using him as a tool to further advance herself.
I was curious, Rick, what was the name of the Hebrew character that's on his forehead? I'm assuming as a result of the personality conditioning.
So that's a little interesting too. The one that we've seen was Aleph. It was the same one from the emulator. But throughout the rest of this flashback sequence, there's another one that appears. It's different. But I couldn't figure out any link like between it and like the level of personality, because they say level 7, level 8, things like that. Like, it doesn't line up with that. We didn't see that other Zohar yet. So I'm really not sure.
Okay, fascinating.
It might not mean anything, to be fair. In some ways, that the idea of personality conditioning is sort of similar to and somehow worse than death itself. You know what I mean? You're completely being reorganized within your brain, such that, are you even the same person anymore? It's Theseus's mind experiment, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect juxtaposition to Ziggy's character, because obviously, Ziggy is like the representation of the idea of what Cherenkov is actively suffering through, having been subjected to this on Ariadne, and, the different levels of, personality, his personality being rewritten by the Federation. And it's like Ziggy had the same thing happen to him, but the opposite is that it seems as though Cherenkov is like struggling for a certain type of reclamation of his sense of self, whereas Ziggy is like, I'm done with life, I've given up hope, I just want to be a machine, I no longer want any vestige of my humanity. But the inverse is that Ziggy's actions always seem to be, in his choices and his character arc, seem to be more human than Cherenkov's. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's just a matter of circumstance, but it's very curious to see kind of that juxtaposition there.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point too, that you have Cherenkov, who is forcefully meant to change via experiments on his mind, or just being rebuilt to his mind, having his mind being changed, whereas Ziggy's was having his body being changed. So his mind isn't different, his body is. Whereas Cherenkov's body is the same, but his mind has been altered. So it is a direct juxtaposition and a direct conflict in who these two characters are.
Yeah, all centered around the absolute hellish idea of this dystopian reality where corporations can just change you like that fundamentally. What does it mean to be human at that point?
Yeah.
It's sort of the central theme that we're talking about. Just to usher us along a little bit more, because we're not done with Cherenkov yet. He hears about the online affair, and he just kills her. Just on the spot, breaks her neck. We don't actually see it, but that's kind of what happens. So he's then back in court and ordered to undergo level 8 personality reconditioning, and loses his human rights. From here on out, he will be treated as, quote, a life form belonging to the Federation. Again, talk about dystopia.
Yeah.
This is where I made a note that the symbol on his head is different. Like I said, I can't make heads or tails of that, if you'll pardon the pun. Maybe it means something, maybe it doesn't.
Yeah.
We then see him walking in this open space. It's Ariadne, I'm pretty sure it is. But he's just walking around, like in the public, and he sees the cloned child of his former wife walk by. He knows it's her. There's like the superimposition of his wife over her as well, so like it lets us know. But they meet face to face, and she looks up at him, and she only says one word. She looks him in the eyes and says,
Garbage.
And he has a mental breakdown and kills her on the spot, and everyone else around too.
Yeah. Now, do you think he was hallucinating her saying garbage? He was just imprinting what he thought his wife would say, as opposed to what this child said? Or do you think the child,
he may have. This may have been a break from reality. whether it happened or whether it was just a break, the outcome was that he killed everybody around.
Yes.
It's tragic. And right now, he's just being painted as this like unstable dude. We learn about why he has these motivations here in a little bit. I'm trying to keep it on the level and not talk about things that get revealed in like 20 minutes. But he's not just like, quote, some crazy guy. Like there's a reason he's like this. And he is honestly, he's a tragic character. I really felt for him by the end. So like we said, he kills her and kills everyone around. So this draws the attention of Margulis, who takes him in like under his wing because he wants to make him useful. Like it's very clear he doesn't respect him, but he's like, you can be useful to me. I'm going to assign you to the Zohar Link experiment. And this is directly from the database. It says, an experiment led by Cherenkov to activate the Zohar emulator. The word link indicates that the procedure entails connecting the Zohar with another entity. So that's all we know.
Ooh, what's the entity?
That's a great question. That's not something we find out in this episode, baby. Hit up those shot glasses.
Woohoo!
Eventually, our group, we're back with us now. We come across the Zohar emulator, and KOS-MOS confirms that this is an emulator. Shion is beside herself. She's like a combination of nonplussed and a little bit angry that KOS-MOS knows about this and that there's a real one elsewhere, even though she never programmed this knowledge into her. But there's no time to talk because Cherenkov, like, crawls out of the distance now. He says something like, you don't know what she knows and you're the one that built her. Like he's pissed. He's in bad shape. He can barely walk. He's struggling to speak. And he says, there's no escape for us here. And he says, I was behind the disappearance of Ariadne. Perhaps this was the Zohar Link experiment that we just learned about. But he doesn't get to explain more. He starts to... At first, it seems like he's having a mental break. I'd be curious to see what you guys think of this. It seems like he's having a mental break. He's talking to things that are attacking him that aren't there. But then the Zohar starts shooting these purple light sources into him. It's weird. And then it also bathes him in this gold light. Through the Zohar's light, he's lifted in a pose that is not dissimilar to Christ on the cross. And as the light flares out, it blinds us. And when it comes back into focus, he is a Gnosis. And this turns into a boss fight.
So I'm not sure if he's having a mental break and that's why he's seeing everything. I think this is the impact of the Gnosis, because we still don't know exactly where the Gnosis come from, what created them, why they are the way they are. And they seem to naturally, in their natural state, inhabit a dimensional plane that isn't entirely of our own. So it could be a mental break in a sense that he's kind of seeing the ghosts of the past and he's kind of coming to terms with his own actions. Maybe that his mind is becoming free from the personality changes, that it's like opening up and he's starting to kind of have some remorse and come to terms with what he is, or he's just starting to see the different plane that the Gnosis live on. And this could be why, as I suggested earlier, it's possible, this is a stretch, I know, but this is why you don't see any living beings on this, in the cathedral ship, which is Ariadne, which is this dead planet. They're not there anymore, but he sees them, because he is going through the process of being a Gnosis, and that's where they are trapped. Because again, what are the Gnosis? Where do they come from? Are they the people who died through these methods in the past? Are the people who died on Ariadne future Gnosis? I don't know. It might be a bit of a stretch, maybe a bit of a guess, but that's kind of what my thought process is here.
Yeah, I think this is a really fascinating scene, and obviously it's very remarkable and noticeable, the heavy-handed Christian imagery that they're invoking here, obviously with Cherenkov being placed into the crucifixion position, and obviously, him, coming to terms in his final moment, feeling like he's being attacked. He's having a complete detachment. I'm kind of interpreting this scene on its face. He was infected, maybe if that's the terminology that you want to use, by the Gnosis that suddenly appeared on the ship that they were on earlier, and then of course it's just the slow degradation. And we're given his backstory in terms of context and how he fits into the whole situation there. But yeah, it is very interesting, and it does raise questions as to like the mechanics of like specifically what the Gnosis are, everything that Chris had said. But yeah, it's hard to. It's a little bit hard to unravel without, I feel like, in my mind, having the knowledge of like what's 2 or 3. I feel like a lot of Cherenkov is going to come full circle, at least in 2. So I'm very curious to kind of find out what happens there. But yeah, this is a very sad end for him.
To touch on what you both were saying, it does make one wonder what happened to the citizens of Ariadne. What if they are all the Gnosis? What if this is how Gnosis come to be? It's just human transformation. And if we're going down that line of thought, interpreting the Gnosis as being knowledge, like their namesake, what does that mean? That humans are obtaining this forbidden knowledge and becoming Gnosis? Is that what we're talking about? Is there a forbidden knowledge? We don't know. The Gnosis are still very, very much a mystery to us right now.
I think that another theory, if I could take a moment to just theory craft here, is that like obviously, from the lore dumps and the exposition that we've gotten up to this point, it's like we're told to understand that the Gnosis exist in different realities. I think that an argument could also be made is that the Gnosis exist in different timelines than us, and that maybe potentially is the fact that like Gnosis, in fact, because of their direct attachment to humans or their constant need to, like, I don't know, become one or merge with, the humans that they come in contact with or disrupt them in some way, might be an aspect of that. This is just humans that are existing in a different time, a different timeline, and that because of the merging of realities, it causes destruction, it causes death, and all of that. And it could be just, this is me just throwing it at the wall, obviously. And again, it's very much a stretch, but very much left open to interpretation here.
I am also playing 13 Sentinels right now, and I don't have the mental bandwidth to think about time travel anymore.
No. Oh, yeah. Is this a replay for you? I think you played that before, right, Rick?
Xenosaga and 13 Sentinels, yeah. But okay. 13 Sentinels is the kind of game that it takes like 2 or 3 playthroughs to actually get what's going on. So after we're done with Cherenkov's fight, right after, Shion is able to see a memory of Cherenkov's. This is so interesting. Why do they have this neural connection? Well, there's only one thing that they have in common. They were both touched by the Gnosis. It's possible. We don't know, but it's possible. In this flashback, Cherenkov is talking with Margulis. It's a bit of a lengthy conversation, but I'm going to put it all in here. So here's what they say.
Behold the light that spreads before your eyes. This light once symbolized civilization, the very will of the human race. But what can be gleaned from the light we see today? The people of this world have cast away their will to create, drowning themselves instead in an endless cycle of consumption. What you see now is the deceitful light cast by their stagnant eyes.
The commander. But who's that with him?
The people you've encountered in your lifetime are not people at all. They are less than human, mere sacks of flesh and bone. Only upon the realization of self-will can a person truly be called a man. You chose to reject the false light, refused to succumb to their lies. That's why you never faltered, even after all the personality reconditioning.
The commander underwent personality reconditioning?
Long ago, man was forced to leave behind his homeland. This was brought about by the masses who extinguished the very light that drove their will. So how about it, Cherenkov? Let us rekindle the torch, so that human consciousness may once again be resurrected. For our sake, and that of our God.
Happiness? Were those my feelings just now? No. It must have been the Commander's feelings. Commander, what was it that you were searching for?
There are a couple of ways to interpret this. Chris, you had mentioned off mic that this is like cult manipulative shit.
Yes. Like straight up cult manipulative shit, because he's just trying to tell him you are the greatness and everyone else isn't on the high plane that you are, but I can show you what this is. So come with me and you will be great, like I am great, and all these people beneath you are beneath you. Yeah, that's straight cult stuff. That's manipulative shit. Come with me and you'll see a world of pure Ubermenchian nation, because that's good.
That wasn't a
He
fumble.
did
That was me
that.
just fucking grabbing the ball and
Oh
running.
my God.
Good shit.
This is Nietzsche, and specifically from like his ideas around the will to power, and that does, I forget. This was probably Resonant Arc. I don't know, but I heard this from another source that this kind of thinking frequently appears in like hate groups, like Nazis. Nazis loved Nietzsche. Interesting. It's not like, I'm not trying to vilify Nietzsche, because plenty of people really enjoy his work, and there are millions of people that have millions of different opinions on him and analyses. Nietzsche also plays a big part in some religions, like Satanism, for example. Anton LaVey was very influenced by Nietzsche whenever he wrote the Satanic Bible. It's this idea of being the best version of oneself that one can be, to constantly pursue excellence. And that is this idea that Nietzsche puts forth in The Will to Power. He never formally defined what he meant by that. He just wrote a lot about it. And as his life went on, Nietzsche kind of suffered reality breaks. So like, it's not always clear what he means. But it's this desire for man to pursue perpetual improvement in the self, to promote nobility and virtue, and to avoid becoming, quote, the last man, which he defines as the antithesis to the Übermensch, or the nihilist. A lot of people think that Nietzschean philosophy is nihilistic. It's not. He hated nihilism. Here's a quote. I think this is from The Will to Power, but this is from Nietzsche. He says, quote, "What is good? All that heightens the feeling of power, the will to power, power itself in man. What is bad? All that proceeds from weakness. What is happiness? The feeling that power increases, that a resistance is overcome." So Margulis is using this sort of philosophy on Cherenkov. Cherenkov does not have anybody. He doesn't have a family or friends. I'm just going to say it right here. We learn in a coming scene, in this next scene, Shion and Cherenkov get to talk in this subliminal or superliminal space of Cherenkov's consciousness. They speak to one another, and Cherenkov was released from the army after being like turned into a weapon of war through these personality reconditionings. He was released into society and just could not adapt. He was literally programmed by the Federation government under these reconditionings. He was programmed to want to kill. Like that is, it's not even biology at that point. Like that is so ingrained into him that he could not reintegrate into society. And that's why these inconveniences his wife cheating on him is not an inconvenience. These triggers that happened to him set him off so intensely, because he was fundamentally recalculated as a human being to want to kill. So that's why he kept doing this. Like he's a victim. He is not just some quote crazy guy. There could have never been another outcome for this. And we see this in real world scenarios too, with like people coming back from active war zones and they just can't reintegrate into society. People coming out of federal prison and they can't reintegrate into society because of things like this. This is just taking that concept to a completely new level. Just saying like, what if we went farther? And all this to say, none of this is Cherenkov's fault. Margulis is taking this Nietzschean idea of the will to power and using it to manipulate him, because Cherenkov is in a position to be manipulated. I don't mean to kind of just go on and on and on, but that's kind of how I'm viewing this whole thing. That's what I'm thinking of here.
Well, so does that infer that Margulis was behind his reconditioning from the beginning?
Could be.
Perhaps.
I wouldn't interpret it that way though. I feel like Margulis is just, he's a very good evaluator, and he sees Cherenkov as a very easy tool to use for his means. But I feel like because they make a lot of there's a lot of discourse about the society that exists in this 4,000 years in the future space authoritarian government, and what they've done to the various people, how they treated Ziggy, how they treated Cherenkov, and how do they treat the Realians currently. And so it's it's very, I think it's very interesting, but I don't know if I would interpret it as Margulis is like, I mean, he is definitely doing machinations behind the scenes, but I don't know if we can attribute everything towards him.
And that's kind of like when they say that he was trained to kill. That's why I have to ask that. This is why I kind of go to the Clockwork Orange route, right?
Yeah.
Is because maybe he was trying to be reprogrammed, but ultimately he kept on kind of resisting it, or got to a point where he broke and just couldn't handle it anymore, and that he kept becoming violent. Like, okay, we're going to try and fix you, and then it does remove your humanity. Like, you're not a fully functioning human. And so you're breaking out of that. And that kind of still goes along with this idea of the will to power, that he, trying to be a human and trying to become a human, he's rejecting the personality reconfiguration.
So I think Margulis just happened to take advantage of a situation. I didn't write this down, but I was, as you were talking, I was like, I know this. What is this? So I went to the wiki. Cherenkov is what's known as a life recycling variant. These are people who, through the Life Recycling Act, the same thing that repurposed Ziggy's body, are restructured at a neural DNA and or biological level for use in things like government armies, which is exactly what happened to Cherenkov. It says here that he was created as a super soldier by a, quote, certain branch of the military, literally created, artificial insemination created. So I think this is, Margulis probably just saw this and said, oh, I can capitalize on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And shifting gears a little bit here, I know that we want to keep going, but something that I wanted to kind of clarify in terms of my understanding of, their use of nihilism, or their use of, the will to power here. And Nietzsche's ideas is this idea that the last man is the antithesis to the Übermensch, but is the Übermensch just not a superior human, human with superpowers?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot.
Okay.
No, the Übermensch was Nietzsche's idea of the ideal man. Like, it's not a literal superhero. It is somebody. I'm going to pull something up. I don't want to misspeak.
Okay,
for listeners at home, and nobody is accusing me of this, but for listeners at home, Nietzschean philosophy is not something you can just research on a Saturday afternoon and bring to a podcast recording. People have to read this shit for years.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I'm at a level in philosophy where I can read Nietzsche, especially stuff like the Übermensch and the Last Man that are put forth in his final books, where he's breaking from reality. I don't feel like I'm at a level where I can understand that fully just yet. Okay, so I pulled up some stuff on the Übermensch because, again, I am far from an expert in this. Far as you can be from an expert. But the Übermensch is what Nietzsche anticipated the ideal human would be. It's not like somebody with superpowers or anything. Somebody who has crossed over the bridge from the comfortable house on the lake to the mountains of unrest and solitude, which I think is from his writings. It's somebody that shifts from otherworldly Christian values and manifests the grounded human ideal, if I'm quoting Wikipedia here.
Interesting.
So, and that's the Nazis use this. Like I said, Satanism uses this. Some people just use this as a life ideal because, you got to maximize yourself, be the best athlete you can be the best whatever you can be. So this idea in and of itself isn't vile or anything, but sometimes bad people get a hold of it. And that's, I think, what happened with Margulis too.
Right. But this concept of the last man, that, they're utilizing here, this is the idea is that humanity has deteriorated because of the overconsumption of modern society? Is that kind of like the direction?
Sort of, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
He kind of looked at it similarly to Socrates. Socrates said the unexamined life is not one worth living. And Nietzsche thought the last man was somebody that sort of went through life unconsciously and was a victim to their surroundings and just went with the flow in society. And he viewed nihilism, Nietzsche did, as the ultimate sickness. Like that, like if something was going to end the world, it was nihilism. So he was as against that as you could possibly be. He was very opinionated towards the end, from what I understand. But yeah, so that's been Philosophy 101. We'll see you all next week. Take care, everyone.
Make sure to do your readings next time, y'all.
I actually am reading. I have a Philosophy 101 book here that I've been going through.
That's awesome.
It's been fun. Yeah, it's a nice little hobby, I guess. But
Nice.
two things before we move forward. So one, Shion is able to feel Cherenkov's feelings here. Like when Margulis is explaining this to him, Cherenkov felt happiness. Probably because he didn't have a place to belong in the world. He's a man without a country, so to speak. And Shion feels that. And she's like, why am I feeling this? No, this is Cherenkov. Why were you feeling this way? And then before their little shared conversation on the beach ends, where they're sort of in that subconscious superliminal area, Cherenkov tells her that she will be here soon too. He's like, this will be you soon, I can tell. So, I mean, there's another scene later on that explicitly says this, but if you were maybe like me when I first played this so many years ago and didn't get it, the implication here is that Shion is going to turn out this way too because she got touched by a gnosis.
That could be one way to interpret it. That's the on the face way to interpret it. Yeah, absolutely. Because that's all the information we've really been given anyway.
I also wondered. Yes. I wonder if it might be a double meaning here too. Like she might emotionally find herself in the same place that he's finding himself now. Maybe because it's like, obviously this is like, you know, his character and his character arc is like very tragic, and he was used and abused, cast away out of society, turned into something against his will. And I'm curious, Shion seems to be a relatively resilient character. She is the heroine of this story, but I'm curious to see if that might have any subtle contextual meaning of like, you'll find yourself in the same position that I find myself now. So, but it could be literal too.
Time will tell. So Shion is distraught at what they've done. They've killed Cherenkov. I mean, they had to. KOS-MOS points out that they've got to get out of here. She says, the connection between the phenomenon boundaries is dissipating. If this continues, this spatial location will disappear. We are in danger. I don't know. When she said that, I said, what? And then you find out what that means immediately. It's kind of tough to explain, but like, the Gnosis cathedral ship sort of disappears and fades out of existence, and our group is just sort of left floating in space. And what happened? It's so weird. It's like I don't know how to explain this. Like, you know how when you were a kid and they in school they would use that projector with the clear sheets of paper and they would draw on them with markers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that called?
We just called it the projector.
Projector,
yeah. Yeah, that works. But you know how the images on there were like kind of see-through? Like it looks like that. Like things start disappearing here. And the Elsa kind of just pulls up into view and the captain is like, hey, and you know, he picks us up, and wouldn't you know it, the Durandal is here too, which is good for us because, you know, the Gnosis haven't gone away and they start to attack everybody.
Okay, this is where I wanted to get into the whole entire Durandal thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like the Durandal's a secret. Like, this universe is very well aware of the Kukai Foundation and the Durandal. They're very influential figures. And you're going off, you know, at the beginning of this game, trying to go find your Zohar and protect it from the Gnosis. And the Durandal can just mercilessly slaughter big waves of Gnosis with no problem without KOS-MOS doing the Hilbert effect?
The Hilbert effect, yeah.
Like, this is just something that happens that the Durandal can just do. And this is just normal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but when KOS-MOS does it, it's a big deal. And everyone's like, wow, we can finally fight them. But you have an entire vessel that can just do it with ease. I never understood it. Like, it was such a disconnect for me in this world, and the cohesiveness was completely shattered because it's evident that they have the means to do these things. And they had the tools to protect this fleet, but they didn't.
Oh, okay. I think I can explain this. And I might be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure when they first see the like legions of Gnosis, I'm pretty sure that's where KOS-MOS activates the Hilbert effect, and it brings all of them into the plane of existence. Like before they get swept up and like absorbed into one of them.
Pulled into the
I think that
ship.
happens. Huh?
Before they were pulled into the cathedral ship?
Right before, yeah. I think that happens because Momo gets like really impressed, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, like that is really impressive." Because like Momo can do it too, but it like really drains her battery, and like she can't do it at that wide of a distance. I think that's what happened. That would certainly explain why the Durandal can attack the Gnosis, though. But I didn't write it down, so I don't remember if that happened there.
Yeah, because the Durandal knows what to do. Like, their crews they know how to attack Gnosis, that they're not like sweating it.
Yeah. And I mean, the idea is that like, yeah, the Durandal is no secret. You would imagine that the Federation is aware of that ship, but I also would imagine that because of who Junior is, he might have a vested interest to keep his, trade secrets at bay, and maybe not necessarily have like the military be aware of what his capabilities are. So, and I mean, we already knew up front that like the Kukai Foundation and like the Federation Council and everything had been keeping everyone on the Woglinde and their whole entire fleet in the dark, even with Vector on the ship constructing KOS-MOS and everything that's involved with the Zohar. But yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a little plot hole, a little convenient, I'll admit. So.
Yeah, I mean, because you'd think that the populace would be like, why are we flying? Like, even like a member of the ships that were in that fleet, like they had to have known that something like the Durandal existed. They'd be like, oh yeah, we're just going to fly into Gnosis that can just kill us at any moment. They should probably, like, no one's mentioning that there's other ships that can just kill them.
Yeah,
I
don't know.
I'm almost certain KOS-MOS used the Hilbert effect. I'm gonna have to put a note in to do a editing room thing, and I'll come and re-record something like confirming or denying, but I think that's what happened. But speaking of new abilities, though, Chris, and speaking of new KOS-MOS abilities, we see one here, and this is insane. This whole sequence, I don't know what to make of it just yet.
It's so cool.
As we're trying to get away from these Gnosis, because even if the Durandal is attacking them, like, they can't take out all of them. So KOS-MOS opens up one of the ship's hatches and like takes a lift, and it's like taking her up to the top. She closes her eyes, and Xion, like, I don't know how she gets on a video call with her, but she does. And she's scolding her. She's like, "What are you doing? You can't go out there. You don't have the ability to attack all of these Gnosis. Like, you're gonna get yourself killed." KOS-MOS opens her eyes, and they're blue. They're no longer red. And she says the following in the least robotic way we've ever heard her speak so far. She says, "Xion, will feeling pain make me complete?" This is crazy. This is so crazy. Like, at this point, I no longer believe that KOS-MOS is fully a machine.
Yeah.
No.
Agreed. I don't think I ever believed that from the jump.
And this makes me think of Chaos's remark when she's sleeping, and he says, "I wonder where the U-real, the U-real. I wonder where the real you sleeps, or the real you exists." Right? Like, what is happening here?
Yeah, who knows? Maybe she's some sort of Gnosis herself or equivalent of, but she's definitely she's not a machine. Well, she is a machine, but she's not a machine. I agree. And for her to ask, "Will feeling pain make me complete?" Like, why would you ask a question like that? Like, is your true ambition to become human? Because you have not shown that up until now. Especially
when Xion tries to coax her into behaving that way. She says, like, my programming does not determine that empathy is necessary at this time. Like, where's that KOS-MOS at?
Exactly. So why the shift? But yeah, you're right. And then it only gets crazier.
It does, dude. It gets so crazy. She goes up onto the top of the ship, and her abdomen opens up. Like, her entire stomach fans out, and there's just this crazy blast. And at first you think, okay, it's just destroying the Gnosis, but no, it's she's like
absorbing them. Yeah. And I find it, like, I don't know, imagery wise, like doubly significant the fact that like this capability like is arising from her like stomach area, her like abdomen area, where you imagine that she's like sucking it in, and it's like, is this some type of like, I don't know, there's some type of like reproductive instinct, or like what's going on there? There's definitely significance of the fact of how they depicted her doing that, for sure.
Another way you could think about that too is like, what is that area on a woman? The womb is there.
Right.
And
right.
if these gnosis, if we are still assuming that these gnosis represent some sort of forbidden knowledge, she is absorbing all of that. That sounds like a very Messiah thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Just a tad.
It's wild, dude. I want to know more about this immediately. And guess what? We don't learn it in this game.
Not in this game.
Take a shot.
She blinks and her eyes are red again. She's back to normal. Everybody on the ship is like, what the fuck was that? Shion is like, how do you have weapons that we don't know about? And she wonders to herself, is this the KOS-MOS that she built, or the KOS-MOS that Kevin wanted to create?
Yeah, and that's where it starts to get muddy for me too. It's like understanding the difference, because I mean, of course, I took some notes, but I wasn't able to track everything as I was playing the game. But I found it like very, very interesting to the extent of like Kevin, he dies. He's supposedly killed by the former KOS-MOS, but like his plans, his ideas are still integral into this version of KOS-MOS that was awakened, but she was like spontaneously awakened. It wasn't something that Vector did outright to like create her. So it's like, did he program her in a way with his knowledge? And if that's true, who the fuck was Kevin? Like, who was he? His character is significant. Why would you just kill him? Do we learn more about him? No. But maybe a little bit more.
Not this episode.
Not, yeah. Damn it. I did it again. Everybody take a shot.
It's one of the hardest. It's one of the reasons this game is so hard to recommend, because like, you've got to be okay with just playing 2 more games.
And that's the other thing too. Maybe if she's wondering if this is the KOS-MOS that Kevin wanted, does that also insinuate then when the incident happened with the previous KOS-MOS that they didn't destroy her and they just used her old frame as a foundation to rebuild her?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's an answer that we will probably get to today.
Yeah.
In a scene that I think is funnier than it has any right to be.
Yeah. One question that I did kind of have at this point while I was playing through the game was, why now? Why did this happen to KOS-MOS now? Why wasn't she able to do this earlier when the Glenda was attacked? Like, what is her change? And I think like the only like answer could have been is that she was exposed to the cathedral ship. Again, it was like, it seems that KOS-MOS is changing more with her increased exposure to the Gnosis. And then now, obviously, with this moment, like everything is completely off the table in terms of what we can expect from her now. She's a complete wild card, narratively.
That's a good point. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Damn, I don't know.
Could be.
The Elsa docks on the Durandal. And everyone's meeting each other. Everyone gets to meet Little Master. He introduces himself as Guinan Jr. to Shion, but he adds, I've got a real name, but let's leave it at that for now. Weird thing to say. But with that, we leave for the Kukai Foundation. There is a solo mech and eggs unit that watches us leave, but we don't know nothing about that. So we're going to learn more about Junior and the Durandal. Junior has a dream. We get a quick dream from Junior here. He is calling out for someone named Guinan, which, I mean, we could assume to be his dad if he's Guinan Jr. He's holding this child with black hair that sort of looks like him, and then he wakes up. We don't get much more, but when he wakes up, we see his hand has 666 branded on it.
Of course it does.
That's on the nose.
A little on the nose, yeah.
We know what that means. So inside the Durandal, we're going to get a little bit of a tour here. There is a room with 13 massive pillars, and everybody is looking at these pillars. Like, what are these pillars? KOS-MOS, like, it's funny. Shion starts reading them a little slowly, and then KOS-MOS just starts reading them just like, I got this. There are 13 of them. 12 of them have the names of the apostles on them. Like Judas, John, Paul, Peter, all of them. And the 13th one says Marienkind. Do you have you guys heard that fairy tale of it's Brothers Grimm, Marienkind?
I have not.
It's
No.
it's the son of the Virgin Mary, is what it is. I misspoke. It means Mary's child, and in the story, it is her daughter, not her son. My bad.
Oh,
Yeah. And it's so crazy because in that story, the Virgin Mary is not like she's depicted as a divine being in Marienkind, which means Mary's child, in German. She's I'm a little rusty on this, so I might have to do an edit, cut this out and do an edit of like where I actually explain it. But like she's given this key that opens these divine doors, and the Virgin Mary says, okay, don't open the last one though. And she does, and her finger turns to gold. But then she lies to Mary and says, I didn't open the door. So Mary takes her voice away, and she's like, I knew you would lie to me. And then she comes back later, and she after she gets married to this like awful guy, and she's like, okay, I'll give you another chance. Like, if you tell me the truth, I will I will make your life right again. And she says, no, I didn't open the door. She's like, okay. Like it's crazy. But I don't know the significance of it here.
it's trying to be a little bit more covert in the way it's being on the nose with everything else, I guess.
Yeah. It might not mean anything. I mean, this might just be the Evangelion approach of using Christian imagery because it's cool.
Yeah.
The writing here is seeming to do a little bit better job than just because it's cool.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So, I mean, and again, this is not something that's fully explained about why they have all these in this game, because that is weird. Because it was a big deal. Again, people know that the Kukai Foundation and the Durandal exist, and it was a big deal for the Federation to get their hands on one of these emulators.
We asked Junior here too. We're like, why do you have all of these? And he gives like a total Norm Macdonald answer. He's like, well, we dabble in a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Just perfectly normal, perfectly healthy.
Each one of these two, by the way, has a different letter from the alphabet on it. So we see that for sure. And I can't remember if it's confirmed here or not, but there are 13. Oh, shoot. Is there 13 emulators plus the original, or is it 12 emulators plus the original? I don't remember.
I couldn't tell you.
I couldn't tell you either, because they don't have the original there, and they're missing one of the emulators, aren't they?
So that's what I'm not clear on. This is so with the one that they've got from us, that's the 12th. So they're missing one, but I don't know if that last one is the real one or if it's a 13th emulator. You know?
Yeah.
I can't remember. Damn it. There's a room that's across the hall, and I think Momo's like, what's over there? And Junior's like, something so terrible, nothing you want to see. That's kind of how he's voice acted throughout a lot of this.
Yes.
But they keep pestering him. They're like, we want to see. So he's like, okay, don't say I didn't warn you. And inside are like giant tubes containing humans who have transformed into Gnosis. One of them is only like half transformed. It's like half girl, half Gnosis. And Junior says that this always happens with no known exceptions to humans who come into contact with Gnosis. And Shion in this entire scene is just like practically shaking.
Yeah. It's really disturbing. Also, like, this scene is giving me a lot of imagery of Genova in Final Fantasy VII. I don't know if you guys got that at all, especially with the girl in the tank and everything. But yeah, no, this is very disturbing for sure.
It's an extremely disturbing. Again, what are they doing with these?
They were like, well, you wouldn't let us make Xenogears into Final Fantasy VII, huh? We'll take this.
Yeah. But that's the thing is it's kind of like, oh, we dabble a little bit of everything. And like, here are these people that are trapped halfway in between Gnosis transformations. So it indicates, once again, like what we saw earlier, was that Cherenkov was turning into a Gnosis, that when you're touched by a Gnosis, you transform into a Gnosis. You go into a different plane of existence, and they just seemed to stop them while they were morphing into that.
Right. I can't remember how they said they got these specimens. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah. Like, how would they get them, and why are they keeping them?
I don't know. Like, I guess I just assumed that they found them in wreckage, and like maybe that's why Junior was out scavenging when we first met him. I don't know.
Because it just seems like to them this is completely normal. Not to Shion, not to your party, but to the members of the Durandal, and by and large the Kukai Foundation. This is just business as usual.
Well, you imagine that like Junior kind of strikes me as a special operative. He's supposed to play it cool. He's supposed to be like that cool guy character too, and he's familiar with and he has been studying them. I mean, he's on a mission to figure out what's going on with the Zohar and the Gnosis and everything. So it kind of, I guess he comes across as being nonplussed in the scene.
Yeah, it could just be him trying to look cool.
Yeah.
You know, a fun fact about the word nonplussed is its original definition meant too startled or surprised to speak, and it got misused so much that it also can mean the opposite, like totally nonchalant. It means both. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So I didn't misuse it. It's just the etymology of it was misused. Okay, that's so interesting.
It's cool. I literally just looked it up today. That's why I knew that.
Okay. Nice.
There's another fact that's revealed here. Chris, I think you had said before, like, where do these come from? Well, apparently the Gnosis were released into this world by Joachim Mizrahi. And I think Ziggy says, you mean the brilliant scientist? And Junior says, brilliant? He was a lunatic. And he continues to disparage him a little bit. But the Kukai Foundation was formed after the war, the Miltian conflict, by the second Miltian government to investigate why Mizrahi did this and why this happened. But, you know, Junior's like, yeah, money's tight in peacetime. We can't get funding. So we just did side businesses. And that's how our Kukai Foundation is in like the Fortune 500 or whatever the equivalent is here. Momo is like really hurt by this. So she walks off and
because she was created by Joachim Mizrahi?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's an upcoming scene. Like Shion goes to comfort her. We have to go and find her. The Durandal is huge. Like it's enormous. It's like a city. And we get around by train, and there's this like observation room, which is like an outdoor park, and that's where we go and comfort Momo. It's really touching, and she says, you know, like, was Daddy really like that? Like crazy? Since he built us, does that mean that Realians are bad people too? So she's struggling with this idea of generational fate and individualism, and the database actually, this is so crazy. The database in game uses the term identity diffusion, and it's defined as, in the game, one of the psychological outcomes of adolescence as proposed by developmental psychologist Erik Erikson, great name, a state in which an individual has an incomplete sense of self, a result of the inability to resolve identity conflicts during adolescence. So part of growing up, I mean, we all go through this, but first of all, I think it's crazy that the game is citing real world psychology.
Yeah.
Kind of nuts. Like I love that. But that's really touching that we see, and you know, Shion and actually KOS-MOS too sit around and like cheer her up a little bit, saying like, oh well, Mizrahi also created the technology to have these fireflies around, and that brings some good and calmness to the world, and you know, like that's a definite good, and they cheer her up. It's really sweet. It's a really, really sweet scene.
I think what's also important, if you know that's what's in the database, is that Momo, as a Realian, is trapped in a constant state of adolescence.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point. Junior too, maybe, we don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kind of, sort of. We do get more answers on that, so don't take a shot yet.
Yeah. Not today, not on this episode today, but in this game.
Our audience is absolutely sloshed by this point, so we got to be careful.
Happy Memorial Day weekend, everybody. So it's time to dock at the Kukai Foundation. This is basically a giant biome with a series of space stations. You can't talk. It looks just like a cityscape. Like there are mountains and there's an ocean. It's crazy. And this is where we meet Guinan Kukai. He is a black-haired man. He's looks a little older than Shion, who looks almost identical to Junior and pretty similar to Albedo if you have a keen eye for that sort of thing. And when they shake hands, Shion and Guinan, we can see that his hand says 669. So there are 666, 7 and 8 maybe, and then 669.
Is that sequence of numbers, is that significant at any point?
I don't know.
Okay.
Not
sure.
in this game.
Gotcha.
There we go.
Gotcha. There it is. There it is.
What's interesting here is he cheers Momo up a little bit. You know, he's like, we're going to take you back to Yuli Mizrahi. Don't worry, don't you worry. But as he's leaving, he looks at Shion. His eyes sort of flash green, and he says, no, it can't be.
I also have an answer.
know.
I have an answer for our question. According to astrology.com, the number 669 is an angel number associated with nurturing, harmony, balance, and unconditional love.
Something else that's interesting too, and I meant to do research on this, but I didn't, so I'm not going to go too much into this. There is this process in alchemy that there's the 4 major stages of the magnum opus, and the 4 of them are albedo, nigredo, citrinitas, and rubido. And we're going to learn more about this, but we definitely hear 3 of those names in this game. And, 6, 7, 8, 9, that's 4 numbers. I don't know.
But it doesn't line up sequentially. I don't know, but what do the numbers mean? Is Junior the harbinger of the end of the world? And if so, like, is 669? And like,
damn, so fine.
Yeah, exactly. Like the relationship that you have between Gainem and Gainem Jr. is brought into question, I think, just a little bit later, because right now you're assuming that this is either his father or older brother or something like that. And that kind of gets disputed in a later scene that we're probably about to get to really quickly here. But it's makes things even more complicated if you go by, if the intention was for 669 to mean that angelic number, which would kind of be in line with the themes if you're doing independent research, as we kind of have been in preparation for this, specifically towards like chaos and all the other angelic and Christian themes that are happening as kind of like this undertone on underneath the surface of everything that's being displayed here. So, hey, maybe we'll find out at some point as we go through episode 2 and 3. Maybe we won't. Maybe these are just numbers to be a red herring of sorts. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Man, this is really striking me now how similar this is to Final Fantasy 13. Like in terms of the work that you've got to put in to understand what's going on, you know?
Right.
Wow.
Or I mean, I think it's more like everything here is facilitating some sort of foreshadowing, but you don't have access to that foreshadowing for like another 2-3 years.
I'd also like to make a quick note here in terms of like the interest. This is second Milsha, right? Where they're on and they meet the director of Kukai.
They haven't gone to second Milsha, I don't think.
Oh, this is not. This is a space station.
Yes.
Yeah, Kukai Foundation is like a separate town.
Right. Okay. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. But I just remember in this scene, I made a note of it, is that it's absolutely one of the coolest sci-fi things that I have ever seen, where the Durandal rises up and the docking port is not a docking port. It's like a layer of water that separates the space station from space. And the like basically the tip of the Durandal enters it in amongst this like huge like metropolis and becomes like this just giant skyscraper amongst at the center of this pool of water. It's like the coolest thing ever. I love this part.
Yeah, it's cool.
Hey, speaking of water, we get our filler episode. We're going to the beach. Junior, I don't think this means anything, but Junior like will say things like, let's go outside and play a lot. It's strange. But anyway, we're going to the beach. We get a little world building, nothing too crazy, but we learn that since this environment is artificial, that Junior can just change it at any time. And for some reason, with these new people he doesn't know, when they're all just having fun at the beach, he decides now is the appropriate time to do that and makes a thunderstorm, which triggers PTSD in Shion. So good job, Junior.
He probably didn't know.
Fantastic.
He was just trying to show off.
10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Interestingly, if you notice, Chaos and like the Realians all have this like little charge battery on them.
I did not notice this.
Like they have some attachment on there. Yeah, like Shion doesn't. Alan doesn't, but like the characters that look like they're Realians, I don't think Junior does. I'd have to go back and look, but I think that's something I noticed about Chaos, is he has something on his body.
Wait, did you notice that when they're at the beach, like in their swimsuits?
Yes.
Oh, I completely missed that.
Yeah, it looks like they have some energy source going on.
That is crazy. I'm going to have to go back and double check. I missed that completely. We're going to have some time to, just explore the Foundation. But before we do, we get a really quick cutscene of Guinan having a video call with this guy named Helmer. Helmer is, I think he's the president or he's a representative of Second Miltia. Like that's where he lives. Like he's in charge there. He calls Guinan Negredo, which Guinan does not like. He's like, I don't like that name. So that's the alchemy thing that I mentioned earlier, but I don't know enough about it to talk about it. Basically, he just tells Helmer that we're on the way. We've got the emulator and Momo. Like, just be careful because we don't know what UTIC's going to do. We're all very suspicious. And we get the mention of Udo for the first time. Every time they say it like, Udo.
Yeah.
I think it's a funny name.
Every time they also say we can't allow that thing to reawaken again no matter what. No idea. I genuinely do not remember what Udo is.
I don't either. It has a stupid name. I'm sorry. It just does. Maybe it has some meaning and I'm just underselling it and I'm just not being, respectful of something, but I think the name is dumb and I kind of checked out whenever that happened.
I wonder if it's related to UTIC, like cuz they're both U hyphen whatever.
Yeah.
I wonder. What did the U in UTIC stand for again? I don't remember. Unification?
Yeah. Or no, on something. Unknown? You said at the beginning.
I did, and now I can't find it. Unknown. You are right. We get some time to explore here. We get to explore the Foundation. There's like an eggs shop, which this is where you meet the old scientist dude if you want to do the Erde Kaiser quest. To get all of the parts for that thing. That's basically the I win button in this game. Just does 9999 damage every time.
It takes a little bit of work though. Not a ton of work, but a little bit of work.
Is this the one that looks like the Unicorn Gundam?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
buddy. I love that one. That's amazing. The I win button, you gotta love it.
There's like a local gang leader around here named King who like he's a tough guy, but he loves cats. And like you meet him and he's like, yeah, he's all tough and shit. And then a cat runs by and he's like, no, Francois, where are you going? And he runs after him. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Chris, this is, I told you I'd bring this up. I've never done this, but Chris, you sent a message to us about this when you found this. You get an email here from this, like, I don't even know what this thing is. It's like a pink grimace that you find here. I don't know if it's a robot or what it is.
Yeah, you're not supposed to blow it up. It's in order to get an item because you can shoot it and destroy it.
Yeah, you can.
But like you meet somebody that says, please, he's my friend. I want to go talk to him. And he's like, he's trapped. And so you go find him and you talk to him, but you get an email. Yeah. And it says, oh, I got an email from later on after you talk to him. It's like, I got an email from a friend of yours and he seems to be following you around all the time. And it's like it's Alan's ghost face.
It's a picture of Shion. Somebody took of you with Alan's face in the corner. It's very clearly Alan.
Yes.
And they keep calling it a ghost. I'm too scared to Google about this because I don't want to get a spoiler. I think one time I did Google it and the the preview text that'll come up seemed like it was going to be a big spoiler. So I didn't read it, but this is so crazy. Like what is the deal with this?
Yeah, I have no idea. And that's why I asked you, I'm like, is this something I'm going to learn in this game? Is this anything? It could be nothing.
You might not even get this email if you blow up the pink grimace.
Yeah, you might not get it at all. It's just, why would the writing in this game is so particular. There's so much attention to detail that it just doesn't seem like this was an accident.
Oh, definitely not. I wonder if it's a reveal like in episode 2 or episode 3. Maybe Alan's dead all along. Maybe that's why nobody takes him seriously. I don't know.
Oh God.
No one knows. No one sees him.
Yeah. Who knows? That's so crazy though. That's creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck is this?
It's just Alan is a lot of dead weight anyway, so it's like he contributes nothing towards moving the plot forward that we know of at this point, and it's just like, okay, this is interesting. I mean, he might be used as a foil later on for Shion, but it is kind of like, come on now.
But it's also treated like that seems like a reveal that would have some weight. It's just kind of like, oh, this is weird, isn't it? Okay, moving on. Like, it says that this ghost has feelings for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. It does.
That's crazy.
I'm fighting so hard not to just Google this right now. Oh man, the patient are rewarded. I won't. I won't do it. Speaking of moving the plot along, after we return from exploring, which you can do. Like, I'm not trying to minimize the exploring. It's just like, we can't make this a 10-part series, so we got to go. Once we return, we get a scene with Margulis talking to somebody else in UTIC, some pink-haired guy that has like Morpheus sunglasses. He's displeased because they're not going to be able to get into Lost Jerusalem. That's the first time we've heard this word. They're going to move forward now to some new plan 401 that involves taking Momo because they want the Y data that's within her, which is all of Mizrahi's research as well as a key to get into Old Milsha, which has been sealed off. That's also where the original Zohar is. How are they going to obtain Momo? Well, I think we might find out pretty soon. Albedo is briefed on this as well, and we get 2 new keywords, the Song of Nephilim and URTV, which are, quote, monsters born of life recycling. So, Cherenkov, almost.
I love it when they bring up the Nephilim. Oh, because like in terms of Christian mythology, the Nephilim.
Yeah,
are,
do you want to talk on that?
Cool. Yeah, they're like the Nephilim are. And I might not get everything right, but they're like the children of archangels archangels and human beings. They're unholy creatures that are often described as giants that cause problems throughout the earth. Like they eat people, or they're an affront against God. Essentially, they're not supposed to exist, and so they're half angel, half human. Kind of like they're considered to be semi-abominations. And they're really interesting creatures because there's not a ton of information about them. And if you do find them, they're in the Gnostic Gospels because they've pretty much been erased from Christian lore completely and entirely. Yeah, Book of Enoch. Yeah. And if you want to get a trippy depiction of Nephilims, go play El Shaddai, Ascension of the Metatron, because they are all over that game. And it's kind of cool how they depict them. They're like these giant, kind of like I would call them giant like body pillows that they describe them as. They're like faceless giants that are kind of aloof, but at the same time, like mindlessly destructive. Like they have a certain innocence to them, but at the same time, they're very malevolent. It's kind of hard to describe, but that's what Nephilim are. And I'm so like this human angel hybrid of what that really represents. It's like, okay, I see what you're trying to do. I'm getting the themes here, but I'm so glad they brought that up. It's really cool.
Yeah, religion is so interesting, man. Like whether you subscribe to these ideas or not is totally superfluous to the conversation, but like just the lore behind it, for lack of a better word, the history, it is so interesting. Like all of this, like all religions, it's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Religious history and religious. I mean, I'm sure there are entire degree paths out there that people can follow down to study this sort of thing. But I will say, just as a quick note on the score, the Song of Nephilim is up there with some of my favorite songs that he did, that the composer produced for this game, and it's very, very beautiful.
Yes, yeah, great track. Before we're not gonna, obviously we can't just waltz into Second Milsha. As we're going, a fleet of Federation vessels block our path. And remember how I said, I wonder how they'll get Momo? Well, I think this might be how. Turns out that footage of both the Woglinde being attacked by the Gnosis way at the beginning of the game and the Durandal defending itself against the UTIC ships, both of those were recorded. And now a video has been edited, deep faked, into making it look like the Durandal attacked the Woglinde and destroyed it. The Woglinde is obviously a Federation ship, so now this is being used as evidence to call for the suspension of the rights of Second Milsha's government. And we're all going to get arrested in just a moment.
Now, do you think 4,000 years in the future, what are they using? DaVinci Resolve? What are they using Premiere Pro? Which software suite do you think they're doing for this one?
God, and knowing Adobe, they won't let the passage of time stop them from stealing money from people.
Yeah, they're using Grok.
Grok. Oh.
This is I made a note a little farther down here. I always get a little fuzzy when games get really into the weeds of their made up politics. So like I'm not like I couldn't explain this situation any deeper than I just did. But I still really like how this political intrigue is unfolding. Like I find this really cool.
Yeah.
It is cool, but at the same time, as I've said on I think episode 1, maybe there's a lot of characters that are getting introduced now as well that you're told are going to have bearing later, but don't have bearing now. And you're just told, remember that. And there's no real payoff. And it's really starting to get bad around this point.
That's why the database in game is like if you look on the forums from the early 2000s, people are like, just read the database. Like you have to almost to keep a sense of what's going on. But what's interesting about this plot though is like whoever orchestrated it is getting ahead of everybody. So now that they've accused us of this, us coming and saying that's not true, it makes us look guilty, right? Because we can no longer like all we have is our word. Like and if we just say nuh-uh, then it's just our word against their video. So our testimonies mean really little. This politically speaking, this was a good move on their part. And Alan even wonders here. He's like, I wonder if this is why Vector HQ just wasn't communicating with us. There are so many strings being pulled here. It's hard to keep straight, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, because they still don't know that what's going on with the game's main antagonist here is what the main antagonist is wanting to do. They think that they still have him under their control. Right.
Troops come in and they arrest us. They're headed by Lapis Roman, who is a captain from the Galaxy Federation. So she takes all of us in as witnesses and confiscates all Vector property, which basically means KOS-MOS. And she takes Momo as well. And Ziggy is like, nah, this all happened way too quickly and conveniently. This was planned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wouldn't you know it, though? It turns out that Lapis is actually one of Helmer's subordinates. This is all revealed in a couple of scenes here. She's on our side. She was sent in to this brigade. Her job is to keep on members of UTIC from within the military. UTIC is infiltrating the military, infiltrating the government, and they're causing problems. And she is sort of an internal spy to keep an eye on them and report everything back to Helmer. So she's going to help us get out of this jam. All that we really know is that UTIC is definitely involved, and they're trying most likely to get into old Milsha to get the original Zohar as well as whatever Udu is.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest problem here, though, is like, how are we going to prove our innocence? Like, everybody keeps talking about like, oh, use the ship's black box, but they're like, no, it's too tamperable. Like, people can alter it. They won't believe it. We need something that's like, what do they say? AAA encrypted or something. Something very encrypted. So we're going to use KOS-MOS's memory bank because KOS-MOS obviously recorded all of that attack with the Gnosis.
And they don't have any level of encryption that can like crack her mainframe or whatever they're calling it here.
Right, because she's top secret, like to the government. Like the public should not know about her.
Yeah. No.
So we've got to remember in the beginning, we dived into KOS-MOS's Encephalon when we were training in our tutorial dungeon. That's where we need to go again. We need to go back in there, get the data that we need, and that should clear our name. Like they can't deny this. So Lapis lets us go, and she's like, "Hey, before you go, like we've got to make this look real and convincing. You've got to rough me up and knock me out." And Ziggy says, "Okay, good call," and just fucking karate chops her.
Yeah, it's so funny.
And then he socks the other guy. He's like, "Forgive me," wham. Out cold.
He is definitely a cyborg of action.
Yeah. And he's not personally vested in any of this, right? Like he's trying to take Momo back so he can be turned into a cyborg. He's like, I don't know. I don't care about any of this shit, guys.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
In the immortal words of Danny Glover, I'm too old for this shit. And so
yes.
It's fair. It's fair.
So that's what we're doing now. We're diving into KOS-MOS's Encephalon. It's such a cool effect, like as we're going in. It looks really neat. There are two scenes, two scenarios that kind of play out here back to back, or not back to back. They kind of intersperse each other. And if I learned one thing from doing the episode on, what's that game? The Quarry, it's that I really don't like having to do that. And meanwhile, so I'm just going to, I ordered it so everything is in one block, even though these are kind of taking place at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
That was a lot of words to explain that, but whatever. When we first get in there, Shion, we're with Shion right now. Nobody else is around. Shion is having some sort of like a vision of some sort. She's on Milsha, where she grew up. She's at a playground, and she sees a young version of herself there humming Greensleeves. Or What Child Is This? Just as a reminder, that's sung from the perspective of those seeing Christ after he was just born in the manger. I have no idea if that's relevant, but there it is.
I mean, it probably is. This, with everything else that's going on, yes, I would assume so.
It's just that we don't have enough information to make educated guesses, you know? We're just...
Right.
It's like they're dangling it in front of us saying like, oh, I bet you want to guess, but you can't.
Yeah, I almost hate saying that because we have to keep saying that over and over and over again, but it's what's going on, yeah.
In this little vision, she reunites with her dad. She's sad that they won't be visiting mom, quote unquote, until tomorrow. And then the girl in white appears to Shion. She says, "This was the last day you saw your father. I've been waiting a long time for you. We have so much to talk about." And again, this goes back and forth, but Chaos and Alan show up. They can see the girl in white, and she finally gives us her name. She's Nephilim.
Also, like, do you see the necklace as she's wearing as a Christian cross or an iron cross?
I'm just going to say I saw it as a Christian cross.
Okay, got it.
I just saw it as Xenogears, to be honest.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Is there a character that looks just like Nephilim?
They use that cross in Xenogears.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. But she explains that we are in Milsha right now. She refers to it as a world of unbroken memories. She explains this situation as such. She says, "A world of unbroken memories slumber at the depths of your unconsciousness. KOS-MOS has sensed this and recreated it here in the Encephalon. This world is also KOS-MOS's memory as well. Memories do not belong solely to one person." So that's Carl Jung, collective unconscious. "All of you must accept the entirety of your memories. You must return to Milsha once again." And when Shion says, why do we have to do that? She says, "Only KOS-MOS knows the answer to that."
Because I said so.
And then this is crazy. As we're walking away, Chaos hangs back, and she asks Chaos, Nephilim does, "Are you sure this is what you want? There's no turning back." And he says, "I know, but Shion is vital to her." And she replies, "And to you as well? What will you do?" So Chris, this was your complaint. Like, we're getting chaos baited constantly in this game, but there's no payoff in episode 1, right? I mean, big time here.
This isn't even the worst chaos bait. That'll be the final episode that we talk about the worst chaos bait. But yeah, more chaos bait here, definitely. I find this entire concept, what's going on here, very fascinating, just because you're right. I mean, it does go into Jung's theory of collective unconsciousness, which I learned from your Final Fantasy IX episodes, which were fantastic, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
It does definitely show that KOS-MOS is far more than the being that Shion created. As it was said by Cherenkov, you created this thing and you don't know what it's capable of. And here it is again. She's going into a world of KOS-MOS that technically she should know that KOS-MOS would have the ability to create a world based off her memories. And this is all a shock to her. So KOS-MOS is going well beyond the intention of anything Shion wanted to make her. And she's forging her own identity and kind of forging her own programming, so to speak.
Yeah. I want to know I want to know what is going on here, but we don't get to know. Yeah. We don't get to know.
Today,
at the very least.
We also get a quick flashback here. We see what happened to the original KOS-MOS archetype. This is what I said was kind of funny. We see what happened to it because Shion says, like, this isn't the original KOS-MOS. Maybe this is what Kevin built. The original KOS-MOS, after it kills Kevin, Shion actually shoots it in the head with a gun, and the head just explodes. which it's not supposed to be funny, but I laughed really hard.
Well, I think that still goes to what questions I had about it. Is did they take the remainder of her body and then rebuild her head? Is the data stored in her head? Is it stored in another location? Is is Kevin's programming still inherent to that body? Or was it in the programming itself that did they hook that programming right back up to KOS-MOS? Because you would think, okay, this one went crazy. Do we start from scratch, or are we going to take everything we did and just look for what we think is wrong with it? Like, how did they redesign it? That's my thought process. Like, that's the questions I had. Yeah. Because if you're having something that, is this the one that Kevin wanted? Well, how could that come to be if this gunshot to the head truly did destroy the older model of KOS-MOS?
That's a good point. I hadn't really considered that. Again, that's not something we learn in this episode.
I'm wrecked, Rick.
It's probably getting old hearing that. And like, I sympathize, I really do, but it's, I said at the start, this is far from a perfect game. I love it, but it's far from a perfect game.
I just love the quote from Nephilim, a world of unbroken memories slumber in the depths of your consciousness. I just think it's so powerful. And then utilizing again, like the theory of collective unconscious, and them all experiencing these flashbacks at different times at the same time. And I know you're going to get to it, but everything that's happening with Junior at this moment and his connection to the Udu is very fascinating. I find that intriguing a lot.
Well, like I said, I do not remember what Udu is, so I'm not even thinking about that right now. But speaking of Junior, you're right. There are scenes that are happening with Junior here. He's with Momo and Ziggy. We see this group of, they're called URTVs, but they're miniature junior. They're juniors, just with blonde hair, just like shooting down civilians. I think like it's not really clear, but it looks like it.
Yes, and you learn about this later, what he's doing.
Yes. I think, yes. I don't remember. I haven't played that far. I'm playing, a peek behind the curtain, I'm playing basically up to where we stop each time because I need to pace myself. Otherwise, I will, lose the thread on all these other projects I'm doing.
Actually, I can't remember if this is the point you learn about it or if it's later. I'm just being hesitant on talking about it because we'd probably get to it later. But I do know in this game exactly where Junior is, what Junior is doing, and what it is referencing to in the overall arcing plot, what he is seeing, like the specific event.
I feel like you learn what happens because it's on Milsha where this is happening, right?
Yeah,
first Milsha.
Yes,
this is the Milshan conflict.
Yeah.
Yes, this is that event. I was trying to dance around it because I didn't know if that was going to be told later or not. But yes.
That makes sense. Junior does confirm that like pretty quickly here. He has a little flashback when there's one of the URTVs has black hair calling out for Ruby Doe, and it is Guinan. He says it's Guinan. We get a little flashback of that scene where Junior was holding little Negretto. We kind of see why he was hurt. It was a white-haired URTV, which I think we can infer is probably Albedo.
It's got to be
who injured him. Junior kind of snaps out of it though, and every time he starts thinking back to this, he gets like really testy and he starts snapping at Ziggy and Momo, like yelling at them. He'll yell, "I'm fine," but he is not fine.
And this is going to double back a little bit, and I was trying to remember where exactly it fit into the plot. But when I was talking about Guinan and how it's kind of like he's his older brother or maybe his father or just an older figure, there's a scene where Guinan gives him a gun, and this is before this, but before they go off on this, and because it's before he gives Momo the bullet that says "Nara baby" on it, and he gives him the gun. He's like, "Oh, I'm so excited!" And Guinan looks at him and says, "You need to act more rational. You need to be more mature. After all, you are older than I am."
Yep. You need to start acting like the older brother you are. Yeah.
Yes.
That is when I said that I would skip through scenes. That is one that I skipped, and I shouldn't have because that's important information. So now these rumors of Junior being Guinan Jr. Doesn't really work out, huh?
No, which is
also,
why I have a real name. Yep.
Yeah. Also, why is Junior older if he looks like a child?
Because he never died. I mean, how did Guinan get recreated if he is Negretto? Because you know all this because it's been briefly mentioned, you have to put these pieces together by yourself. It's not like shoved in your face. But yes, I mean, that's the case. How did all this happen?
Yeah.
So this is the final part of what we're going to talk about today. There's this dungeon on Milsha is we go back and forth. Well, actually, I think we start with Xion, then we go to Junior and his crew. We're doing a little bit with both of them. And with Junior's crew, Junior, Ziggy, and Momo, we find Labyrinthos. The database says it's not clear if there's any relation to the labyrinth that was built to contain the Minotaur, which I thought was funny. Even the game is like, we don't know. But this was Utic's central organizational tower. And on top of it, we see what appears to be Joachim Mizrahi. He is quoting scripture here from the book of Revelations.
Hallelujah! And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them, and they were judged every man according to their works.
That voice. That's Daddy. Daddy!
What? Oh, stop. Where are you going?
Let me go! Daddy! Daddy's calling for me!
Daddy? Is that really him?
That's Joachim Mizrahi.
And hell
Without
were
a
cast
doubt.
into the lake
That's
of fire.
Joachim Mizrahi.
This is the second death. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. Rejoice, all ye! The time for feasting has come.
I'm pretty sure this is like the final judgment day. Like after Satan was unbound from hell after a time of peace, he kept doing what he did, and those who died with Christ are offered seats in heaven, whereas the non-believers were cast into the ocean of hell, which is what he was talking about here. And this is where victory over sin, quote unquote, is achieved. Again, I'm not saying it's not an endorsement, obviously, but this is what this scripture is saying. But after he says that, he promptly sets himself on fire and leaps off of the building, which just properly and fully traumatizes the shit out of Momo.
Yep.
I think it would traumatize anybody.
Especially since she sees him as like her actual father. Like, you know, she firmly believes that's him and wants to look up to him as a role model, look up to him as somebody who is clearly, you know, guided. But, you know, as they're perceiving this scene, this collective unconscious, you know, wherever they are in this liminal space, it's very, very curious to see that he's being depicted as just an unhinged person. Somebody who is like obviously like going back to what Junior had said earlier, he's an absolute lunatic, and he did this to everybody. So it's very curious.
It's interesting. It's interesting too. Like KOS-MOS obviously remembers this because she constructed these memories. But also, if he was a lunatic, why is he quoting specifically Revelations? Which, from this point of view, this chapter in Revelations is after Satan is and the non-believers are cast into hell. This is, if you are a Christian, this is the ultimate victory, right? This is good. So does he see himself as that? Like, well, supposedly he introduced Gnosis to the world, forbidden knowledge maybe. So does he see himself as being the Messiah of light and like being part of the good guys, quote unquote?
I guess
it's
you could say
it's the end of
he
the
is,
podcast, guys.
I guess you could see himself as seizing the will to power.
Yeah. It's I don't know. And we're actually up to the point, like, I don't remember a ton of the game after this. Well, from my past playthroughs, I mean, I'm playing it, obviously, but like the end of the game is always a little muddier to me. And I think partly it's because of how many of these threads are introduced and kind of left hanging. We don't learn a ton more. So I am really interested to get through to the end of this and move on to part 2. Not that we're going to do part 2 on the show like right away, but eventually.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't wait. But this is where we're going to end for today. I thought that would be a hell of a last final scene. That's one that you could look up on YouTube pretty easily. I recommend it because like it's really powerful. It's really cool. And next time we're going to wrap up everything. We're going to get to the very end. One of the most infamous scenes in this series is coming up, and it's really cool. There's some Japanese English differences too that are very interesting. And we're going to be done. We're going to see how many of these questions get answered. We're not going to keep a tally because like I've lost track at this point, but yeah, I can't wait. This is going to be fun.
It will be.
I got to say, as always, Chris and Nick, thank you for joining me again. I know this is a big time commitment. I really do appreciate you hanging out and talking about this game with me.
This has been fun. Thank you again. I've said this before, but being introduced to this game and introduced to the title and having the opportunity to break into it with the both of you has been really enlightening. I wouldn't have known a lot of this stuff. I mean, I forgot most of the Jungian that I studied in college, but this has been very, very eye-opening for me and fun to kind of pick this game apart. So thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate being on the show with both of you. I often feel intimidated because both of you sound so intelligent. I love picking apart this game and hearing the way you guys talk about it. And exactly what Nick said, Rick, is that getting me to play this game after all these years, I deeply appreciate it. And being able to talk like this has been a blast. So thank you both so much.
I can't speak for Nick, but the trick is sounding smart and hoping people don't listen to what you're saying. That's the trick.
Exactly. You gotta fake it till you make it. Fake it till you make it, baby. Yeah. Chris, am I wrong? Sorry to cut you off, Rick, but Chris, are you already working your way through 2, or did you already play it at some point?
No, I haven't even started it yet. I've overcommitted to too many other projects, and
fair.
And hopefully at some point I can get to it, but definitely on the list for this year, especially in support of this effort. So.
And Nick, Chris would disagree with this, but if you're into this, I mean, in a lot of ways, Xenogears is a more complete work in and of itself. You might like Xenogears a lot more than this.
I might. And I just listened to Dave Jackson's episode on it recently, and he's got some really, really interesting takes on it. So I avoided the spoiler section, of course, but I think you're absolutely right. And after learning about this game and understanding Takahashi and Soryasaga's, their style, their rhetoric, I feel like I'd have a good time too.
I've been thinking about this too. Like, I cannot imagine being so familiar with another culture's religious texts and myths and fairy tales and folklore to reference all this stuff the way they do so well.
Right.
I cannot imagine, and God bless the localizers. Jeez,
there must have been a gargantuan task for them to do that. So yeah. Kudos to everybody involved on the team there. Somebody give those folks a honorary degree.
Oh my God, yes.
All right. Well, until next time, we've got some stuff to chew on, things to marinate before we finally get to the end of Xenosaga Part 1. Thank you everybody for listening. We're going to do full and proper promos at the end of next episode. Until then, please check out Friday Night Gamecast and Retro Hangover. You can find everything in the episode description, as well as for us too. The socials, the Discord, the Patreon, everything you need is there. But until next time, thank you for listening. My name is Rick. We're checking out for now. Signing off for now? What do I usually say? I don't know. We'll see you next time.